Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Discovering Dawson's Creek as Season 2 trundles on. Jeannine, you were very excited at the end of the last episode of Discovering Dawson's Creek because we were doing a particular episode this week that you happen to enjoy very much. We did end, of course, in very steamy, sexy, kind of
Yes.
intense areas, didn't we? At the end of episode 10 of the season 2, high risk behavior.
Yes.
Was last time, and the two we have today. Well, we have one that is the fallout from that episode and everything that goes on there, the emotional turmoil that stems from intimate goings on.
Yes.
And then we take a sharp left turn into kind of new relationship dynamic territory in the second episode we're talking about today, when we meet Pacey's father.
Yes.
There's a bit of a fishing trip that goes on.
Yes.
Which is an interesting turn because I feel like an awful lot of season 2 of Dawson's Creek so far has been the primary 3 relationship dynamics. And of course, it makes sense that it has been that, and there's an awful lot of story to garner from all that, obviously. But we haven't really had too much outside of it. Sure, Mitch and Gail a little bit, but where's Grams been for most of the time? Couple episodes that were really heavy, and then where? You know?
Yes. Yeah, we were getting some really good stuff with Grams and Jen's relationship really developing and them kind of finding common ground and not having as much of a contentious relationship, and Grams having some really good moments as well. But yeah, now the kind of focus is off of her. She's not really around. And yeah, I think the most we end up getting is stuff with Mitch and Gail, but even they have felt a little bit absent. And now we're getting this focus on Mitch, which we were getting a little bit of in the last couple episodes as well, when he was trying to repair his relationship with Dawson. And Dawson, I think we were on his side a little bit. He gained some ground with us in those last
just
couple
a little
episodes.
bit, yeah.
Yes, but I think he's taken several steps back.
In the episodes we have today, you mean?
Yeah, not so much in Sex She Wrote, but more in the father-son fishing trip episode.
Yeah.
In terms of just him really not having any perspective and kind of having this woe is me attitude about his life that is pretty charmed in comparison to both Jack and Pacey, and his kind of self-involvement blinds him to really even understanding just how good he has it with his dad. And then even just kind of how shitty he is to Mitch too, in terms of making Mitch feel like he's not good enough. So that episode in particular had me like, awesome.
I mean, it was that. It was almost his attitude towards Mitch for me, and his kind of continuing attitude towards Mitch to never really understand his side of it and how tough it must be for Mitch. That is the most issue I face with Dawson's attitude towards all of it that does obviously go on in the second episode that we have today, which is episode 12, Uncharted Waters.
Yes.
Season 2.
So once we get into that, you'll have to remind me of the point of something between Dawson and Mitch that surprises me that Dawson doesn't immediately understand about his father. That is something that is kind of his core. But yes, I think we're jumping a little bit of ahead because there's a lot to talk about in these 2 episodes. But
yeah, we'll obviously get into a little bit of a step back that perhaps Dawson does take in our own minds in
Yes.
that episode. But we expect the woe is me self-centered attitude from Dawson. That's
Yeah.
not a surprise to me. That doesn't necessarily, no longer even gets under my skin, that when it shows up, because
It's
that's
just kind
just
of
his
ingrained into the
character.
character. But I mean, the fact that we saw him progress a bit from that and really kind of empathize with people in the last 2 episodes,
Yeah,
that
like
was a
that's
nice
what I
shift to
understand.
see. Yeah, so to see him kind of revert back to this self-centered person, was
Well,
obnoxious.
yes, but I'm saying that's what I understand about it, because you can be self-centered but also empathize. That's not I
Yeah.
don't believe
Mhm.
that's mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
I think you can be both, and Dawson in the last couple of episodes, reasonably more than a couple of episodes, has shown himself to grow a little bit in that way. Yes, he still thinks about himself predominantly, but he's able to see others' perspectives. And in the episode 12 that we'll have coming up, obviously,
Mhm.
it's as though that's been forgotten a
Yes,
little
like, he
bit.
doesn't see it at all, like, it's just crazy that he doesn't even know how to read the room. So yeah, we will definitely get into Dawson's step back for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was kind of excited for Sex She Wrote just because of, uh, the implications of what we saw in the episode prior. I liked kind of the continuation. I think we get a couple episodes like this. I think we're gonna have another episode that's like a two-part situation
Okay.
coming up, which will be a part of the celebration of the Dawson's Creek anniversary. It was
Mm.
released on January 20th, 1998. So we will, I believe, have another episode of this show releasing on that anniversary. And I think we will get to the first episode of that two-parter um,
Okay.
on that episode. But yeah, I was excited for this episode because I liked the mystery aspect of it. Um, Abby gets kind of fun moments in here to do what she does best. And it's also kind of a fun little guessing game for us as viewers too. Um, Kind of see who did it. Obviously I know, but it's been a bit since
Yeah.
I've seen it. And just to kind of understand people's motivations for um maybe why they kind of maybe lie about doing it and haven't, or we kind of try to figure out the reasons why they ultimately didn't, and that kind of thing. So I like the focus on these kind of couplings and them having to kind of face the ideas of sex and getting to hear the reasonings as to why or why not they did or didn't.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, it was very interesting. Let's get straight on into it. There is plenty to talk about with season
Yes.
2, episode 11. Sex She Wrote, not Murder She Wrote. Angela Lansbury is
No, no,
unfortunately nowhere to be seen.
no.
The binder has come back out, Jeannine,
Yes.
obviously. And
Yes.
I like how you say Abby has a lot to do in this episode. We see what she's doing, but she is continuing to be just a terrible person,
Yes, but she
generally.
ultimately does kinda end the episode in a moment of doing the right thing.
A little bit, sure, although I don't think she deserves it.
Yes. So, I mean, in both of these episodes, she kind of has these little glimmers of being a human, and we get some insight in terms of why she does and does what she does and why she says what she says. So, I like that we do delve into the complexities of her a little bit, and that she
Yeah,
ultimately ends this episode in the right place.
I
Um,
guess. I guess.
so yes, so getting into episode 211, Sex She Wrote. Who done it? Dawson's gripping video report on mysteries sets a high standard for English class excellence. But when Abby finds a sexy and intriguing yet unsigned discarded love letter, she will stop at nothing to solve the real life mystery in Cape Side. Meanwhile, Dawson's script rewrites lead to speculation that he is sleeping with Jen, while Joey and Jack deal with the repercussions from their artistic interlude. And Pacey inexplicably gives Andy the cold shoulder.
Yes.
So, yes.
As we discussed, it is really the fallout from high risk behavior. It almost you feel like, as we obviously do 2 episodes every episode of discovering Dawson's Creek, that it's almost unfortunate that high risk behavior and sex she wrote didn't come as the
As a
2
grouping.
episodes.
Yes, which is again what's going to happen to us when we get to the next set of episodes. which
Well,
is kind
it's
of
it's their fault for
Yeah.
putting 2 episodes that go together not on, the even numbers,
Yes.
which they should do, or not on the odd number to start.
Yeah.
Which is very annoying. But it is interesting because obviously I go through this whole episode not knowing exactly who did it. I know obviously I had my thoughts at the end of
Yes.
high risk behavior.
Didn't you say you thought it was Jack and Joey?
I did, yes, because I gave the reasoning that it was, the people who did it were the couple that actually took the clothes off, which obviously Jack did. Which, I mean, I don't know if we just want to out it right now. I mean, we're going to obviously talk about it anyway.
Yes. Yeah. We can.
But it's not them at all, is it?
No, it is not.
It's not them at all.
No.
It's Pacey.
Pacey and Andy, which they ended as the ones that were kind of the least suspected because they kind of we got verbal confirmation in a conversation they had an evening set up to do it, and then Pacey says he kind of didn't want to, that he just wanted to enjoy the night. He didn't want to put any pressure on her or anything like that. And then we see them leave the hotel. So ultimately, at some point in their minds were changed and they ended up going through with it. So
this is
I
the
like
most
that kind of
interesting thing about this whole but this is the most interesting thing about this whole episode and how it all actually kind of comes about is the fact that it is it'd be the same if it was Jen doing this, right? Almost the same if it was Jen having been the one writing this letter, right? Pacey is clearly, generally, in our minds, in the minds of the characters as well, the most intimately advanced person in the group, right? So this is where the mystery stems from, because why on earth would it be Pacey writing this letter saying, oh, we shouldn't have done this, oh, it was too intense, oh, it was just all too much. He should be the one who doesn't think anything of this kind of thing anymore. He should be the one who this for whom means nothing anymore, and things like this. And it is just something you do. And this is what happens. And it's not a big deal. But because of the seriousness level that he takes his relationship with Andy, it obviously clearly is very serious from him and very terrifying for him. But nobody suspects him of it until he's actually outed as the writer of this letter, because he just seems the least possible or the least appropriate candidate to have written this letter. It's an interesting switch up. It's the best. I think it's almost the best solution because it's the least obvious solution. Yet it is the one that makes the most emotional sense.
Yes, and I think that's why they ended up kind of going that route, because I think the other ones were pretty obvious. But also, I think there were going to be questions there, as we've kind of seen how characters, particularly Dawson and Joey, kind of deal with sex and kind of shy away from it. So it would have been interesting had it been those two characters really taking the sleep, particularly with other people, because I think by the end of the episode, we do kind of see that, if they were going to make that leap, they kind of wouldn't want it to be with other people. They kind of put each other in those boxes, but they don't outright
Yeah.
say it. So I
No,
liked even
I
interesting
think
how they couldn't really define it, because it was like they got to this point where, it was like, "Why did you want me to think you slept with Jack?" Or, "Why did you," probably for the same reason you wanted me to think you slept with Jen. And he's like, "That's not an
yeah.
answer." And she's like, "Well, that's the only answer I can give you." And that's kind of where they leave it.
I
So,
don't even know if it's a bold statement to say that obviously I don't know what happens, but I
mhm.
don't know if it's a bold statement to say that I believe those two will sleep with somebody for the first time together. You know what I mean? Like
You
Dawson and
think,
Joey. I believe Dawson and Joey will lose their virginities to each other,
okay,
essentially.
okay,
That
that's
I don't know if that's a bold statement. I don't know obviously what happens, but it just seems to make sense in their minds that eventually
yeah,
that is what will happen.
yes. Well,
Regardless of who they're with, what happened. I don't know.
yes,
Obviously.
no,
Anything could
yes,
happen.
obviously. Well, I mean, I think that in the point of what you've seen thus far, I think that is a fair assessment. So,
So that's clearly not what happens, otherwise you would have had a more no,
well,
I'm
I'm
joking.
not trying to confirm or deny anything for you. I'm
I
just saying
see.
you thought that you said you didn't know if that was going to be like a kind of extreme thought to have, but at this point of what you've seen so far, I don't think it is. That's
Yeah,
all I'm
because
saying.
it
Yeah.
would have been easy for either of them to have slept with Jen or Jack
Yeah.
for that particular. I mean, it would have been quite shocking if Dawson had have ended up sleeping with Jack, given
Yes.
that
Especially
they hate each other, and that
yes.
Joey would end up sleeping with Jen. So it wouldn't be a same sex situation because that it's not been shown on the show, nor does it make emotional sense because those two or those four characters collectively kind of dislike their their
Opposite
same sex
persons.
counterparts.
Yes, which really comes to a head huge for Joey and Jen in the next episode. Um,
Does.
yes. Um, but I also kind of like Jen and Jack's reactions when Joey and Dawson obviously kind of have this jealousy about the situation, to the
Well,
point
yeah, I think it's
where they end
reasonable
up,
for them.
yes, where they end up lying and and saying that they slept with the other person, and then only for Jen to kind of step in and be like, "No, why are you lying? Like, we did not have sex," and Jack saying the same thing. So, I like that, people can see right through this kind of ridiculous, um, jealousy battle that they end up making this out to be. But also, it's really interesting how Abby kind of manipulated the situations with
Oh,
all of
she's
the
very good at
couples
it.
to get them really thinking weird things. Obviously Chris, her kind of sidekick,
Yeah.
he is, uh, you know, plying Joey with the script and the changes in that to get her to, not only make her jealous of Jen in terms of Jen kind of taking her place with Dawson in the filmmaking aspects, but also, the script change of Dawson now having his pseudo character in this movie sleep with the neighbor, as
Yeah.
opposed to
Sh-
ending up
who- I
with the
wonder.
best friend. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder who the neighbour's supposed to represent. It's not.
Exactly.
It's not as though he's making it plainly obvious whatsoever. No matter what he says about his new movie and his new script, oh, it's got nothing to do with my own life at
It's
all.
like the
Yes,
essence
it
of
has.
us kind of thing is
No,
basically what he
it
tries
is.
to call it. Yeah.
You are telling the exact story, almost detail for detail, just with
Yes.
more actual action going on
Yeah.
than what did because you think that's interesting. There's no self-reflection there. I thought we'd started on a little bit of self-reflection from
Yeah.
Mr. Leary, Jeannine, but we haven't, have we? Because we're still on this train of let's make my new script. And he's getting more praise from various other people as well about the town in these couple of episodes. Oh, well done for your award-winning script. Can't wait to see what you do next. Oh, aren't you going to be a big shot
Yeah.
director and all this kind of stuff? I think Pacey's father says as much to him in
Oh,
the following
yes.
episode.
Yes.
But
And
but his movie is silly and it's annoying people and
it's
you
derivative,
can't
and it feels
realize
a
it's
little
completely
lazy.
derivative.
Yes, yes, and it's him maybe trying to rewrite history in some ways, because and then even the jealousy kind of persists going into the next episode when he's talking about Jack and still kind of talking about him and Joey being this very specific thing to each other, and Jack really not being able to live up to that kind of thing is the energy it keeps like shoving at Jack.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
I don't love his I obviously don't love his dislike for Jack because I think it's a little bit unfounded. But I, as complete contrast to that, also kind of get it because I do think Jack sometimes is a little difficult as a person because
mhm.
he can't process what he's gone through properly himself.
Yes. I mean, and we get a little bit of that from Andy when we start learning about their mother, and she kind of talks about the differences in terms of how she deals with it and how Jack deals with it. And even with Joey, when she kind of tries to ask him stuff and he's very evasive and he won't say what's going on, or he tries to act like things are fine, or he just, doesn't want to think about it, and that kind of energy he gives off also kind of really complicates things. So yeah, and then we saw a bit of that at the dance. You obviously were in the wrong for kissing somebody else's girlfriend, but then
Yeah.
to kind of get in Dawson's face and say, "I'm not sorry about it," kind of thing as
Yeah.
well. Like,
Maybe it's also like he maybe does have a little bit of an annoying face. Maybe he does. Maybe he does. You know when he gets a
maybe,
little bit pouty
yeah.
and it's just like, oh God, stop doing that with your mouth. Um so I mean, in that sense, maybe I get it, Dawson. I'm all over the place with feelings towards characters at the moment, I think.
Yes, and I think this
Which
episode does a lot to kind of have you focus in on these little details about these characters as well, in terms of how they're
throw some
manipulated, how they
curveball.
handle this situation. So it's a high pressure situation with these characters for sure. So I think you get to learn more about how they handle things, and kind of whether you maybe generally like them or not from this episode, which is really
Yeah.
interesting. So I'm
But I said,
also inclined to appreciate, because I do know obviously where things go, but
yeah.
I think I can tell you without too much of a spoiler thing that a really strong friendship will develop between Jack and Jen. And
Okay.
I don't think I realized that we got glimmers of that friendship kind of building up in this episode, because by the end of it, her and Jack are having that conversation, and he confides in her why things didn't go all the way with Joey, that he,
Yeah.
had a little bit of a, getting it up issues, and
He
so
he,
that's
he
why.
did.
Yes, and so he struggled with that, and he confides in her with that, and they have a kind of really great bonding moment. So it was just kind of an interesting thing to know what happens with these two characters in terms of them really becoming the best of friends,
All right. Okay.
probably the tightest in the group by the end of the series,
Wow.
and that the glimmers of that started here. So
That is interesting, actually. I mean, I can see kind of why from this mutual almost we may end up being scorned by these two characters who, for God's sake, just need each other but can't see it. Back and forth, back and forth. Let's get together. Let's break up. I need space, Dawson and Joey. Because
yes.
as much as I have always been Team Joey, it's a bit like we're just. I get it. I get that. I get why Jack and Jen would
kind
be
of
mutually so
yes.
annoyed at the pair of them.
Yes, and considering how they acted in the big kind of reveal moment of the big crux of this mystery that Abby is trying to solve, and the two of
Yeah.
them kind of going back at each other and telling basically lies on Jen and Jack.
But
And I mean,
there's just no
yeah,
need for them to do it.
yes,
And they only
and
do it because they think it's the proper thing to do
yes,
for the two
yeah,
of them's
to get
relationship, and they're
back,
not
yeah.
thinking about anybody else.
Yes, to really make the other one jealous is kind of what they're kind of reducing themselves to in this moment.
Yeah,
Um,
it's stupid, really.
yes, but I mean, we did get hints of, I think, Jack and Jen as well when, they were trying to set the 2 of them up at the dance. So,
I
to see
mean,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
develop more here, I think is really cute because I do know that they go on to be the best of friends going forward. So,
Okay.
yeah, that was just kind of a fun thing that I don't think I noticed happened or realized happened so early on.
I mean, I will say as well, I do really like the general structure of this episode. I mean, it is called Sex She Wrote, obviously,
Yes.
the play on Murder She Wrote, and it does very
Yes.
much play like a murder mystery. You're
Yeah.
finding little clues, you're finding developments of clues, or namely, Abby is finding developments of
Yes,
clues.
questioning people, twisting their words to get them to say things that end up revealing
Yeah.
something, like, when Joey leaves her classroom, she ends up leaving her naked drawing of Jack, so then that kind of
Mm,
ends up being a clue for them, like, "Oh," maybe thinking like you thought, "Oh, this is the one couple that actually
yeah.
took the clothes off," so I
And then it
love
gets
that,
passed around and everybody
yeah,
gets a look.
yes, yeah,
Um, and I mean, okay, everybody gets a look, and we ourselves as the audience get a look at the drawing as well. And then I'm just kind of thinking, no, why are we drawing nude people but leaving out a particular element of that nude body?
yeah,
I
it's
didn't
kind of
think that was the point when you were drawing nude people. I thought
yes.
when you were drawing nudes, the point was to draw everything about
Yes.
that body.
Well,
That
when
was
you're
the
on
is that not
network
the point?
television, that's
Yes, yes, I
what you
understand
gotta
that,
do.
but I just thought it was a
Um,
little bit silly
yeah, that he's, like, tucked ugh,
that he's all
strategic.
like tucked inside himself.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Must be
Um,
uncomfortable, Jack. No wonder he
yeah,
couldn't get it up.
yeah, I mean, you were having it squeezed in for all that whole time you were in the painting session.
It
But
wasn't actually there. He's a plastic doll.
oh my god, maybe. Um, but yeah, really interesting the Pacey and Andy dynamic. She
Yes.
immediately kind of starts believing all the manipulations and lies that Abby's telling to ultimately manipulate her into saying things that she needs her to say or wants her to reveal for her
She's a
mystery
very
that she's doing.
easy,
Yes,
very
because we do
easily for being
establish
somebody so steadfast and so stubborn and so I know what I'm doing is right that
Mhm.
Andy is. She's so easily led and easily
Oh, she's
emotionally
so easy
manipulated.
yes. So for the fact that she could so easily believe Abby when Abby's telling her, "We know that something happened with you and Pacey, and, everybody's talking about it." So then Andy's so quick to assume that Pacey's just been going around telling everybody that they had
Yeah.
sex, which is just like, you know him, you know his heart, you know he wouldn't do that. Um, and you know Abby to be this major manipulator, so why would you also believe that? But then I guess
Yeah.
I can give her maybe a glimmer of a pass in terms of because we see Pacey being kind of cold and distant with her. He doesn't want to
You
show her
do.
his paper. He's kind of being squirrely. When she tries to bring up um their intimate time, he kind of brushes it off. Um,
Yeah. I don't say
so
what I say in a negative light. I
yeah.
just say it as a factual thing and as a kind of I'm watching it going, I wish you weren't like this, Andy, because I actually
Yes.
really like you as a character.
Yes, but the
And
fact that you're letting
want,
this girl who lies constantly to manipulate you, it feels like
yeah,
you're not being the smart Andy that we know. No, I get
you
what you're
you
coming from.
you're not being, and you should be, because you deserve to be that. You have
Yeah,
shown yourself to be that, and it's not happening, and it's a little bit annoying, but not in a bad way, in just a kind of the way this kind of show should make you
yeah,
feel, kind of way.
yes,
Um,
yes,
because you understand it,
yeah,
and you understand her insecurities, you understand the pressure she puts on herself, you understand all the mess that's going on in her mind
in her
from
home life
all
and
these
everything
angles, in
else.
her home life in particular.
Yes, and so she kind of pushes herself in other ways because of what's going on in her personal life. But just to kind of set up generally Abby's kind of moment at the end. At the
Yeah,
beginning, it's set up that she will fail this class if she does not do this project where, it's an English class. So the theme is to do something, make a report or do a presentation based around the mystery genre.
yeah.
And so that's why when Chris finds this note in class, he gives it to Abby. And so she decides her project is going to be figuring out this mystery of who had sex. And
Which has
so
got
that
nothing to do with English whatsoever, so I don't
no,
really
but I
know
guess
how
it's
where she
it's
thinks she's gonna get
I guess
in the
she feels like
class.
it's a real life mystery because Dawson kind of in his report, he showed a clip from a movie and talked
He
about
did.
the different acts that you would get in in a murder mystery type of thing. So,
Should a
I
very
guess
old
she
movie as
would
well. I didn't even know
yes,
what it
I was
was.
like,
What
I was
was
gonna
it?
ask you if you knew what movie that was.
I couldn't
Um
recognize it, I don't think.
Yes. So I think Abby's whole point is like she can at least show the structure of a mystery and show that she understands the concept of it through this
Yeah.
little thing, finding the clues and then getting them all together in a room and all these kind of for the big reveal and all of that kind of thing. So it's clear that, it's set up, established by Mr. Peterson, which remember Mr. Peterson because he does come back with a big
Yes, you've said
moment with
this.
Pacey later in the
Yes.
season. I think I'm pretty sure I'm sure pretty because we've seen Peterson quite a bit. He was the professor when they had the study sessions. He's here.
Mm.
So I'm pretty sure Pacey's big moment with him is in this season. Um, but yeah, it's pretty well established that if Abby does not turn in this assignment, he's going to give her an F. So when she kind of manipulates everybody and then gets him in this room to reveal, what she's put together after solving the mystery, and she does reveal that it is in fact Pacey who wrote the letter, and he's the one who kind of has this weird feeling about them having sex and all of that. Andy feels used and she feels
Mm.
rejected, and so she gets really upset and leaves, and then everyone kind of has this really disgusted reaction towards Abby for doing what she did. And so then by the end, when um, she has her assignment, she's ready to hand it in. Um, she tells Mr. Peterson, sorry, Mr. Peterson, I don't have my assignment. And she takes the F. So she doesn't
Yeah.
expose any of these people, which is like, wow, okay. Yeah,
It's quite
shocking.
shocking, really, isn't
Yes,
it? Because
yes.
you don't expect any semblance of, because she sees, look, okay, yes, okay, she does see how it affects everybody, Andy and Pacey in particular, obviously, given that they're the ones who did it, and Pacey wrote the
Yeah.
letter, but just how emotionally it affects them, because Pacey goes through the ringer in these couple of episodes as well.
Yes,
He
yes.
is all over the place in his emotions, in his feelings, in his head. Andy is too, obviously, in this episode. because
Yes. So he ends up
it's almost like
ultimately
she doesn't know where they
where they
stand.
stand, yes, and so he ultimately has to, so obviously kind of how he's acting is making her feel a certain kind of way about it, and her being really vulnerable, especially in the situation of, giving yourself to somebody who, you really care about for the first time, but he has this experience and you already having
Yeah.
this insecurity about that, which we established, I think, which is again, I think I talk about this a lot when we talk about the show, little things that you don't think are really going to be called back to, because a lot of shows drop things and they'll set up things and then they don't go anywhere, which this show does do, which you'll see over time. But
No
there's
doubt.
a lot of nuggets of things that like were kind of established that end up playing into how characters feel or react. So, having Andy have such insecurity about Pacey's reaction to them having sex plays into the insecurity she had about him having experience with Tamara and all of that. So
Yeah.
those insecurities she had before they were really even a couple make sense if you think about that in this context. So I like that little things that were peppered in, sprinkled in, that you might not have thought were important, end up really establishing how a character will react to something later, which really plays into
Yeah.
this scene. So she's feeling some type of way about, why he said, he wanted to maybe wait before something happened again, that he wasn't so sure that they should have done it and all these things. And so he has to explain to her, because this is the first time he's really, been in love with somebody and felt that
Mhm.
love back. And she's making him a better person. He was afraid to show her his test because he is getting good grades. And he's like, he doesn't know how to be this person. He knows how to be this screw up that everyone sees as a screw up.
Yeah.
um he doesn't know how to be loved. He doesn't know how to be a good student and have that make sense to his day to day. So it just scares him because he doesn't know how to be this person. And so he admits that that's what scared him. That's what, he realizes that he's completely falling in love with her. Fear of maybe losing that, fear of believing maybe he doesn't deserve it. So all of that is what is building upon him. And I love Joshua Jackson's performance in explaining this, because it could come off as like, "Oh, that's a dumb excuse," but he makes it make sense for
Oh,
the
he does.
character.
No, absolutely he
Yeah.
does. He is
Yeah.
giving probably the best couple of performances he's given
In these
in the show
yes.
so far in these couple of episodes, Joshua
Yes.
Jackson. But yeah, obviously Abby sees all that and has some sort of conscience,
Yeah.
inexplicably, a little bit.
Yes. Yeah,
She
so
does
really
turn out to be
interesting.
a person.
Yeah, and she does kind of in the end of the second episode as well. So, these 2 episodes really think about Abby, because that will play into things that and happen later with her
Yeah.
character going forward. So, some interesting things are gonna happen with her as well to kind of look out for. But, yeah, I think I was excited for this episode because I loved all the really kind of interesting manipulations and character dynamics, and we're working with, Jack and Joey, Jen and Dawson, Pacey and Andy. And then those dynamics kind of get switched around, where we end with like
Yeah.
Jen and Jack kind of really talking things out, and Dawson and Joey talking things out. And then Pacey and Andy really having another shift in their relationship.
Mm.
And getting
To
to go
more
into this.
serious levels.
Yes, yes, and then getting to see Pacey, who we've seen kind of be this black sheep character for all of season 1, this kind of slacker, now kind of really doing good in school and having someone who really props him up and is his cheerleader, something he's never had. And to have
Yeah.
that, have him have these worries about being this person, about, really not understanding how to feel good about himself, but really kind of finding his own. By the end of this, he's all in on, I'm going to do good. Andy, I want to make Andy proud. I want to make myself proud. She's making me a better man, making me a better person. So to have that us end on that note and then go into this episode where we see the
Mm.
person who just kind of strips all that away from him
Yeah.
is a really great setup for
Oh, it
what we
is.
what we
It
get
is.
into.
It is what
Yeah.
makes this structure of putting these couple of episodes, this particular overarching
Yeah.
story, right next to each other, just work so structurally well as we
Yeah.
get in. to episode 12 of season 2. Uncharted Waters. The binder
Yes.
is back out. The fishing
Yes.
trip. Mr. Witter is met.
Yes. So I did warn you about Pacey's home life, his
did.
family, his father, and all of that. So I'm glad we're finally getting into that here. So episode 212, Uncharted Waters. Don't rock the boat. A father-son fishing trip provides a forum for Dawson and Pacey to air their frustrations over their dysfunctional parental relationships. And a last-minute addition to the crew has Dawson wishing he was back on dry land. Meanwhile, when the girls help Gail with a news piece on teenage trends, Jen and Joey dig into the core of their animosity towards each other. And an unhealthy dose of Abby's bitterness nearly turns ladies' night into a full-fledged cat fight.
Yes. Shock from Abby there again, just trying to ruin things as usual. But no, what is the most interesting thing about this episode? Obviously, it is finally seeing Pacey's relationship with his father. And you had warned me about this. You had told me about this. He is a particular John Witter, I think is his name.
Yes.
He is a
The police
particularly
chief.
stern man, a harsh man, a cold man. But a man who has reason in his own mind to why he is the way he is. A man with a certain moral, you know, about himself, and I'm being harsh to you because the world is a harsh place. I'm preparing you in the best way, you know, for the future struggles that you will have. Which admittedly I wasn't, the way you were going on about him as the absolute devil of everything, and I'm not saying John Witter is a good man, a nice man. He isn't. He's an unpleasant man. Absolutely, he's an unpleasant man who doesn't listen to his son and doesn't really love his son as opposed to loving himself and the idea of, you know,
what he thinks he's doing for his son.
What he thinks he's doing, the negative impression he has on the world. Probably this comes from being police chief and seeing all, you know, the criminals of the area and whatever, and it's just seeped into his mind. But he does give himself a reason as to why he is the way he is. He's not just doing it because he's evil. He believes he's doing the right thing. It's not the right thing, but he believes he's doing the right thing, which, admittedly, from what you were describing, I didn't even think we would get that from John Witter. So I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt, but I'm just saying I appreciate a little bit of depth.
Of nuance. Yes, no, I mean, obviously I have a soft spot for Pacey, and so it just really breaks my heart to see how this man treats him and how Pacey reacts to it. And particularly when Pacey now is in the mindset to be trying and doing better, and the fact that his father is not seeing that kind of negates his reasoning for treating Pacey the way he's treated him. Okay, you're a father, you're the police chief, your other son Doug is following in your footsteps, he's, you know, doing good things, all this but then your other son's a slacker, he doesn't care, he's getting bad grades. Of course you're going to kind of treat him some kind of way for that. But the fact that now you see that's all he'll ever see him as. He will never encourage him to be more. He will never try to see him as any better or that he can be any better. And when he actually now is, he's still always just going to see him one way. And like Pacey, the whole episode is trying to get his father to see that, no, Dad, look, I got a great girlfriend. She's beautiful. She's encouraging. I'm getting good grades in school, and that's because of her. And, you know, I'm on the trajectory to really finding something good for myself. And his father is not even aware of any of that, will not listen, will not hear any of that, because he is now just on this road to see Pacey one way. So I think
even in the details of the actual fishing trip itself, like Pacey's being told to do all the grubby work,
Grunt
all
work.
the dirty work,
Yes.
because that's what's most important. You know, you're not seen, but you're important. But just don't,
Yes.
you know, don't be seen. Get in there, do the hard work, and that is what, you know, will lift you up. And then
Yeah.
obviously the episode, the fishing side of the episode develops and develops and develops to the point where Pacey ends up personally catching an enormous fish.
Yes.
And basically after all that, and it's this huge thing, and it's quite impressively
Mhm.
done as far as fishing goes. I've no concept of fishing, but it seems
Yeah.
quite impressively done. As soon as he's, you know, holding this fish up to have his photograph taken with the fish, his dad pats him on the back and he says, "That's about as good as it's going to get for you, kid."
Yes, you enjoy it because you're not gonna get very many more moments like this kind of
You
thing.
don't say that, man.
Yes, and, you know, Pacey's really excited in the moment. He thinks maybe this will also be a moment with him and his dad, and then he really just writes it off as this thing. But then there's so many other little moments, and then Dawson does not help in terms of how he relates to his friendship with Pacey. And there are a lot of moments that suck. You know, we saw that really crappy moment where Dawson was so involved in his whole melodrama that he forgot Pacey's birthday.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's right in front of his face, seeing it, and you are just writing it off, like, um, pay his dad runs into him and Dawson, and he's giving Dawson all these compliments, as you mentioned earlier, talking about, "Oh, you're gonna be a
Yeah.
great filmmaker and this and this and this and that. And unlike my son who's gonna be flipping burgers," or something like that, he says. And then, you know, before he leaves, he tells Dawson to keep Pacey out of trouble. And then Pacey kind of vents to Dawson. He's like, "See, did you hear that dig about fast food?" And like, he's constantly just haranguing me and making me feel like shit. And Dawson's just like, "Oh man, it's not a big deal. He's just joking," you know, and just really downplaying Pacey's feelings.
Yeah. But it's
And
because
Dawson does that several times in throughout the episode.
he does, but it's because John Witters had nothing but nice things to say to Dawson. So that's all that's in
Yes.
Dawson's mind.
Yeah. So the
He's
fact
not
that
even
he
heard anything
E
else.
exactly, so the fact that, like, Pacey is really just telling him, "This is rough for me, like, I can't stand this relationship, he's terrible to me," and Dawson really just acting like Pacey's making a bigger deal out of this than what it is. And then Dawson really being kinda crappy to his dad, which we did mention as well.
Yeah.
You know,
And
they're
I
trying to
don't
get
understand how you could possibly
yeah.
be mean to Mitch in this episode when he's wearing the most lovely, thick fisherman's turtleneck I've ever
Turtleneck.
seen in my entire
Yes,
life.
I had a feeling you were gonna appreciate that about Mitch. But the thing I was kind of, alluding to earlier was the fact, which we will definitely circle back on Pacey and
Yeah.
his dad because they have some really interesting moments in this episode. But, the fact that Dawson is very much judging his father for not having you know, real career, that he is, you know, kind of trying to find something that he loves to do. And Pace and Dawson's judging him for that. But isn't that who Dawson is? Dawson is has constantly been described for the past 2 seasons as this dreamer, as this
Yeah.
idealist. And now he's judging his father for being a dreamer and an idealist and wanting to do something he's passionate about, wanting to do something he loves. And Dawson is the same exact way, but because he doesn't really need to have a job because he's in high school, he's judging his father for not having a conventional career and still holding out hope for a dream to do something that he really is passionate about. So the fact that he's
Yeah.
judging his father for being a dreamer when he himself is a dreamer is just wild to me.
It is wild because it comes from this still image that Dawson does have of Mitch
Mhm.
of he is my father, he must be at my home with my mother, and and this is what my father is. And no, your dad is now more of a human being than that. Your dad's always been more of a human being than
Yeah.
that, but he very much is now because he's made his whole decision with Gail, and you didn't like that. and you didn't understand even a little part of that,
Yeah.
really, did you?
Yeah, I mean, and
You
I think
you
yes.
tried making
Mhm.
yourself feel like you did, but you
Yeah.
didn't really understand any
Yeah.
part of that because you just wanted what you wanted, and now
You
you
want
just
yeah.
want what you want again. You want
Again. Mhm.
security from your father, you want steadiness
Him
from your father,
yes.
and you don't see him as a human being in this light anymore because it's not the image you
You
have of
have
him. And
for
Mitch is
him. Yeah.
being
Mhm.
very open. Mitch is being
Yeah.
very honest with him and very much, you know, treating him with phenomenal maturity, I
Yes.
think.
Trying to
And as
understand.
a
Yes, I get why he feels the way he feels. I
yeah.
wanna hear him. And Mitch is great
And
in really
wine over here is giving it the big un.
yes. Yes, and I mean, even I think we had our frustrated moments with Mitch in terms of, like, I got moments when Dawson was like, "Why can't you just forgive her?" Because at this point, Mitch was, like, very much not playing in, shit or get off the pot. He was really keeping Gail in this weird limbo, which was kind of
Yes.
unfair. And Gail
Yes.
obviously wants to reconcile, but she also was like, "Just make a decision. If you don't wanna be with
Yeah.
me, then just divorce me. But don't
And he
tell me
made
like
his
you."
decision.
Yes, but don't tell me that you want to work on this and try, and then you're just kind of feel like you're already checked out. So I know I kind of get Dawson's frustrations in terms of that because we were having those same frustrations with Mitch. But
Yeah.
you always kind of went to the default of, this is a man who was hurt, who was scorned. So you have to give him some grace in the situation. And here, Mitch is giving Dawson so much grace in terms of trying to understand why he feels the way he feels and really hearing him out. And Dawson really isn't reciprocating that until the very end when he finally kind of hears his father and Mitch telling him, like, I didn't realize I was such a disappointment to you. And so when Mitch kind of frames it in the way that it did come out when Dawson said it, that's when
Yeah.
Dawson finally kind of realizes, oh, that yeah, I really shouldn't have said that. But then also Dawson has been witness all day to two people who have terrible relationships with their father. And Jack
Yeah.
also helps give him that perspective. Like, my father abandoned us. We can lie and say that he's working in Providence and whatever, but the truth is he left us. Your father moved up the street. So you can't compare because when I think Jack says, my father's gone, he left us. And then Dawson kind of is like, I hear you, buddy. And he's like,
Like,
no,
oh
your
yeah, me
father
too.
literally, I love what Jack is just like, dude, it's not the same. Your father moved up the street. Like, I was like, yeah, Jack,
He
tell him.
does literally say that,
He
yeah.
does literally say that. And he's like, I think you're in need of some perspective, Dawson. And so Dawson hearing this, and then, him really finally seeing Pacey's dad just reject him at every turn. I think
Yeah.
it's really when in the fish moment at when he says that
It
thing to
is,
him
yeah.
about this is the best when Dawson really kind of realizes that yeah, maybe my relationship with my dad isn't that bad.
Yeah.
So Dawson gets
Because
a ton of perspective in this episode, but he's very petulant and because ultimately it was supposed to be Pacey and his dad, Dawson and his dad. But Andy's been kind of asking Pacey to bring Jack along because he has no male friends. And he forgot to tell Dawson about it. And then so Dawson very much makes a big deal about Jack coming on the fishing trip with them and Pacey not telling him. While all day, Pacey has just been being berated by his father. And so I love that Pacey is like telling Dawson too. He's like, Dawson, like, I don't care about your stupid little feelings
stop
for Jack. Like I've
whining.
been, some people are just trying to get through the day without getting yelled at or, being made to feel like an
Yeah.
idiot. And so I love these kind of sobering moments for Dawson when people just kind of tell him, wake the hell up, Dawson, look the hell around and see what is happening with other people outside of your little bubble. Because what's happening with you is not as bad as what's happening with other people. So really get some fucking perspective. 'Cause I'm just like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but Dawson, this whole episode. So he gets there. He ultimately
He
gets there by
does
the end. But the
eventually.
whole episode, he's just so self-involved and selfish, and it kind of sucks.
But it's
Um,
his character trait, and it's left for us to wonder whether he's gonna keep up this realization or this perspective realization, or whether he's just gonna revert back to normal in the next episode.
Yes. So this is definitely an episode where I'm like, can't this creek just be somebody else's creek? Because Dawson sucks.
Yeah, why does it have to be Dawson's Creek? Can it not for once be like
Pacey's
just called
creek. I think they
Capeside
just switch the week,
or Pacey's Creek?
switch the creek to whoever's like on top, whoever we like the most that week. But
I'm happy to do that. I am
yes.
happy to do that.
So this week was definitely Pacey's creek.
Yes. There
Yes.
is the should we say the beach scene as well,
Yes.
which we
Well,
must
we
talk about.
get that, after, him and his dad are playing darts in a bar and his
Yeah.
father's kind of drunk and being a little bit belligerent. And Pacey could easily beat his father at this darts challenge that they kind of give each other. And it's kind of
Yes.
playful and fun at first.
It is, which
And
is nice
yeah.
at first.
Yes. And so, Pacey's kind of winning. His father's, still berating him. And all Pacey has to do is like make this last dart to win and beat his father. And, Pacey realizes he looks at his father and his father's just scowling at him over his shoulder before he makes this final shot. So even though Pacey could do it, he knows it's not going to win him any favors. It'll piss his father off, or he'll write it off as not meaning anything. So he might as well just succumb to letting his father win and have that, let him perpetuate this idea he has of his son, that he sucks and he's a loser, kind of thing. So we see Pacey purposefully miss the shot, and his father ends up kind of bragging about it. So then they find themselves now on the beach. His father's drunk and kind of like passing out, and Pacey kind of says, well, I guess this is a better time than any to have that father-son talk. And Pacey just lets out all of the things that he wants to say to his father that he could never say to him when he was conscious. And it's heartbreaking. He's on the verge of tears, and
he
the
has
things
the
he
back
says.
and forth conversation with himself.
Yes.
Almost. It's a complete emotional breakdown. A completely viable emotional breakdown. Understandable one. And kind of a terrifying one, because look, if there's something Pacey has that certainly Dawson doesn't have, it's humility. It's an ability to, I think it is important to have a good balance in one's life outside of Dawson's Creek. This is just general speaking.
Yes.
Of self-confidence and humility. Don't be arrogant. Dawson's arrogant. Dawson's
and I think he doesn't think, and what the thing is, he doesn't think he is. That's what makes it
no, he doesn't think he is.
He's not self-aware at all.
Pacey has no self-confidence and he's just pure humility. Pacey has every reason to be woe is me. Yet can never be yay is me when something good happens. Dawson is always yay is me, but can never be woe is me when something bad happens.
Yeah, when something bad happens and oh my gosh, it's the end of the world.
Yeah. He can never see any other side. He's always yay is me, I'm right.
Yeah.
You need balance, and neither of them have it. And you see what we've seen in virtually every episode from Dawson in the opposite sense, in the arrogant sense. You finally see the extreme of that in Pacey in this episode, the extreme humility, the extreme misery, almost, in the extreme self-hate that he kind of has and that has been just beaten within him.
Yeah.
And it's horrible to watch. It's really nasty to watch. And Joshua Jackson is wonderful in this performance.
Yes. When you talk about, it opens with him and his dad on the beach, and his dad kind of passes out. And so he starts having this conversation. He says, I guess it's time for that father-son chat that that I wish we could have had. And he starts kind of saying, talking in his dad's voice, like, oh,
Yeah.
are there any cute girls that you're talking to? And he tells him about Andy and how beautiful she is and how wonderful she is, and she's making him this better person, and that he would love her so much. And then he kind of gets into, why don't you love me? It's your job to
Mm,
love me. What is so wrong with me that you can't love me?
yeah.
And he
And that's
starts kind of,
that's the thing with
yeah,
John Witter, I suppose, isn't
yeah,
it? And I said before, he has his belief that what he is
hmm,
doing is right for his soul.
yeah,
So that is within him, but there is no affection there at all,
yeah,
which is surely the most important thing. Surely any, harsh belief that you have about teaching people the right lessons should come from a place of affection and not
yes,
from a place of I know what's right for other people,
yeah,
which is where John Witter comes from, I think,
yes,
isn't it? It is very much an I know what's right for other people. You, my son Pacey, are really no different in my heart to Dawson, to random citizen of Capeside, to
yeah,
anybody,
yeah,
who I believe I can hold moral high ground over.
yes.
And this is the issue. This is the issue. There is no affection there. And
But
Pacey
that's all he
struggles,
wants.
obviously.
Yes.
Yeah,
And Pacey can't just write it off and say, well, my dad doesn't love me. That's fine. I can get love in other places, from Andy, from my friends, whatever. But no, he still wants that validation. So the fact that, I think that's why him being in love with Andy and Andy doing all these great things in his life is scary to him, because he's been brought up to believe that he doesn't deserve it. So it scares him. And so again, just really great how these episodes are juxtaposed together, ending on this high note of him, revealing these fears he has about, being all in with Andy and being so in love with her, and the fears he has about being this person that he doesn't know how to be. And then his father kind of showing us why it feels like that in the very
yeah,
next episode. Yeah.
yeah. It's crazy. And it's definitely, all what this episode's about, really. And
Yeah.
sure, we get the other story of, Gail's news report and all the girls and
Oh,
having
yes. We didn't
another.
even talk about the girls.
No,
We were so fixated
we
on the
didn't.
boys.
So we'll briefly
Yeah.
talk a little bit about it now, but it obviously ends in another fairly positive place for Abby, but it is Joey and Jen that are the most interesting part of all of
Yes.
this.
Well, we open with, Dawson kind of talking up Jen's producing to Joey.
Yeah,
And so she already, Joey, Dawson asked her first if she wanted to produce this movie with him. And she was like, no, I'm into my painting. I'm trying to do my own thing, la, 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 la. So he asked Jen, and Jen's been great. And so he's kind of gushing about how great Jen is, thinking that it's fine because, Joey didn't want to take
yeah,
part in this film. And Joey immediately feels like she's being replaced, or that, it's a compare and contrast type thing. And she makes like these kind of subtle comments, and Dawson is like, no, it's not like that. It's just different. Like, but she's doing a great job. And then Jen comes up and then reveals that she's talked to Gail, and Gail has asked her to set up this kind of girls' night to talk to young teenage girls about the struggles that they are going through in high school, for
I
a
mean, what an
segment.
awful idea for a news report. I mean, come on. I mean, if you're going to do it as well, do it with total strangers. Don't do it with your son's buddies.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean, I will ultimately, when you see how it ends, like, they end up revealing some really real feelings
yeah, but
about things.
not to her on the news report. It's more of just it ends up being casual conversation that turns into serious conversation. It's not. I'm not. I was going to say I'm Gail Weathers. Then I'm Gail Weathers in
Gail
wherever
Leary, yes.
Gail Leary. Is she even leery anymore? Who knows?
Yes, yes.
Um,
I mean, in her
well,
mind, she
they're
probably
being
is.
divorced. I'm Gail. I'm here with my son's friends. So, Joey, what is the major issue facing teenage girls today? Microphone. And like, don't do it like that.
Well, that's why it doesn't work. They show that that's not working at first.
I know, and it
So
was annoying.
I thought you liked learning about the young female perspective,
I
because it's
do when
not
it's
something.
not stupidly put down my throat like that.
Well, that's
Gail.
what. But obviously, you see that that doesn't work. So they agree with you because
They do agree with me,
it
but
was
Gail
Jen's
doesn't.
idea. It was Jen's idea, and so the fact that Jen is kind of cozying up to Dawson's mom, and she has this idea and working with Gail on
Yeah.
this thing, and on top of producing with Dawson, all of this is making Joey feel like she's completely being replaced. So
Yeah.
Jen is asking her, she's like, I have this segment I'm doing to talk about young, high school girls. Would you want to be involved? Because you are probably one of the most thoughtful people I know that could say some really interesting things. So then when they get to Dawson's house, it's Abby, Andy, and Joey. And so, when they see Abby's there, obviously there's, the rolling of eyes and the disappointment. Abby kind of flirting with the camera guy, talking shit about everybody. And, Gail trying to ask them questions and none of them really wanting to talk because Joey's
No.
already obviously in this weird place. And Abby's just writing everything off as stupid. And Andy, she doesn't want to say anything. And so then they realize this is not really working. That she pulls Jen aside and they kind of decide that, well, let's take the pressure off the situation. I have junk food, girls, just hang out, talk amongst yourselves, and let's just make this a girls' night, more relaxed kind of thing. So
So
ultimately, the
naturally, they go
girls,
upstairs and watch an X-rated video.
yes. So part of this excursion is they sneak up to Dawson's room. They're kind of snooping around, and then they find his tape of Goodwill humping, and they
I mean,
decide to
why has he
watch it.
been hiding this?
Um,
Where's he got it from?
I mean,
Where's
maybe
he
you gotta
been? What's he
he I
been
mean,
doing?
he works at the video store, they probably have a
Oh
section.
yeah, theft.
So, yes. So, yeah, so they're having a good laugh over that, and then I think Abby makes a joke about, "Oh, Jen, that's Jen's future career," and Joey, being in her little petty stage, laughs at it, and
Mm.
but I also love the maturity on Jen because it's like we don't even see that from people our age today who have a problem with somebody and can just go up to them and say, "Hey, what's your problem with me? I know things da da da," and you're being kind of antagonistic. And I don't think this is the first time. I think, in all of these kind of phases of Jen and Joey's relationship, Jen has always been bold enough to just go to Joey and say, "What is your problem
Yeah,
with me? I don't want to have a
yeah.
problem with you. I want us to be friends." So, instead of your little veiled jokes and laughing at the little things Abby says to make fun of me, what is the issue? And so I love that Jen, once again, it can do that because a lot of people can't do that or won't do that.
No,
They'll
very
just
few
they'll just
people
let
can
it build
actually do
up,
that.
or they'll come vent to somebody else about it, but they'll never talk to the person and get it resolved. So I love that Jen just ultimately sees all the little digs and then she confronts Joey like head on about it.
It's a good trait
Um,
to have.
yeah, so ultimately, they're kind of more comfortable, Gail catches them and gets them out of Dawson's room, and now they're in a mindset to kind of really talk about things, but Abby kind of starts popping off and talking about she's like, "Well,
Mm.
if I say, something about crazy people, then Andy gets upset. If I say anything about slutty people, then Jen gets mad." Like, and so then ultimately at this point, she's just insulting everybody, um, and so they kick her out. And so then it's just kind of the three of them. And so then they can talk about their issues, which I think we kind of alluded to a little bit with Andy, and how she kind of puts all this pressure on herself. So that's kind of what she ends up
Yeah,
getting into, that,
yeah,
she has to get perfect grades and do all these things and make and act like everything's okay because, it really isn't. And then Jen feeling like, she's nothing. People make her feel like she's nothing more than this reputation that she has, and she wants to be more, but she just can't because people will never see her any other way. And then Joey getting into kind of, without saying specifics, why she's jealous of Jen. That,
Yeah.
Jen having all of these experiences and being this worldly person just reminds her that she's from this small town and that she may never get the opportunity to do big things or do interesting things and be this interesting person. So Jen being around her is this interesting person that reminds her that she may never get to be that. So we
Yeah.
do get some really interesting insights on these girls through these conversations. And then kind of by the end of the girls' night, they're going home and leaving, and Abby is stuck there because her mom was gonna pick her up at a specific time. And so she ended up having to just sit outside and it's the whole time. And then she says some bitchy thing to Andy, and Andy kind of claps back at her. And then we get this really interesting reveal about Abby and why she does the things she does. So she kind of
Yes,
admits to
interesting.
Abby. Yeah.
But I think it is a stupid reason. It's interesting because it gives her. It's the same with John Witter, right? It
Yeah.
gives her a level of depth that I maybe didn't believe was there. But
Yeah.
the actual reason behind it is my life is too boring.
Yeah.
Be pleased your life's boring compared to some of these.
Well, that's what
people.
Andy tells her. That's what Andy tells her. She's like, I would kill for your boring life and your parents' boring divorce, but yeah, Abby kind of says, I say all these things to get a reaction, to get a rise out of people, to make things happen because my life is so boring and there's nothing going on and there's nothing that makes me special or unique or anything.
You know
And
what you
so
don't
I
want in
have to.
life is drama.
Yes. Well, she feels like that's the only way she can get anything interesting out of anything is if she creates the drama. It
It's
gives
a
her the sense of
ridiculous
power
thing to think.
and just makes things more interesting. So that's kind of what she ends up admitting. But I like that they put a reason to why she's
I
like this.
absolutely.
Yes.
It's a reason.
And
It's understandable, but
yes,
it's a
and
stupid
but
way
even
of
when
thinking.
she's saying it, I think I commend Monica Keena's performance because she actually kind of conveys it with a bit of vulnerability. Like she almost
Yeah,
seems a little bit teary when she's saying it.
definitely.
Um, and so then, ultimately Abby's mom comes to pick her up. And she kind of has this nice moment of like offering Andy a ride. So we get these glimmers that Abby is a human person who does care about things, but this is all she knows how to be,
It's
kind of
just
thing.
all a front.
Yes. It's all just a front for her to hide that she is average and boring and nothing special and nothing that nothing in her life is as interesting as anybody else's.
I mean, I think
Um
that's important as well. Here
yeah.
we are talking about morals and how people are
Yeah.
embracing just being a little bit boring.
Yes.
Is
And I love
so
that Andy tells her, like, I would kill for that. Like,
that is
I
such
wish. So the fact that you
personal
take that for
security to do
granted
that.
and you just want to fabricate these things and treat people like shit to make your life seem special is really sad.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Many people should learn that as well. You see here, there, and everywhere everybody's showing all their own personal drama or these heightened things that they're doing. Can be very, very good things, can be bad things as well, not just in Dawson's Creek. Again, I'm talking general life.
Yeah.
But you know what? Having a chilled, nothing extreme really happens life, or even when something extreme does happen,
Yeah.
not being so about it
Yeah.
can be so healthy.
Mhm.
Going with the flow is a wonderful, wonderful thing, a wonderful mindset to get into.
Yes. Yes. So, um
Being boring,
yes,
embrace it.
exactly. And I love that Andy really kind of throws that back in her face. So, yeah, 2 episodes that really develop these characters in an interesting
Big
way.
time.
Yes, kind of give backstory in terms of why they react the way they do to certain things. You know, we were getting that with Andy and building up her backstory and Jack. And now we get into Pacey's backstory and Abby, you know, a little bit more as well. So really just building and growing at a really interesting trajectory, I think. And there's more interesting things to come. So
I have no doubt about that. Of course, we will be back in a couple of weeks on discovering Dawson's Creek with episodes 13 and 14, 14 of which I believe is this first half of
oh
the
yes, I
two-part
think it's
episode.
to be or like not to be, and then the next one is like that is the question.
I see. Okay,
Yes.
so it's Shakespearean, is it now?
Yes.
Exciting. Well, before we get into that, of course, subscribe and ding the notification bell on this YouTube channel for all the fun stuff we do here on It's a Wonderful Podcast. Find the It's a Wonderful Podcast feed, of course, on all major podcast platforms, wherever you do listen. For Morgan hasn't seen the parent show of this and the main show, It's a Wonderful Podcast itself. Obviously, very exciting things ahead in 2025 for this new year. Very good, fun times. We enjoy it. We like it. Don't we? All the Patreon, the donation link, social medias, they've been scrolling down at the bottom. They're also in the description down below. And I don't believe we have anything else left to do, Jeannine, other than a simple, maybe. Well, Dawson was particularly whiny today, I suppose, wasn't he? So he wasn't last week, so we didn't do a whiny Dawson.
No, we
time.
didn't.
We didn't do a whiny Dawson. So I think a whiny Dawson is about right today.
3, 2, 1. My life's done.
Bye.